Broadcasting on the internet airwaves from the great state of Minnesota, my name is Shaun, and you're listening to The Shaun Tabatt Show. Welcome to the inaugural episode of The Shaun Tabatt Show. Our very special guest today is Yochanan Marcellino, and we'll be talking about the major motion picture, The Identical. This interview was originally recorded in January of 2015. Today, my guest is Yochanan Marcellino, founder, president, and CEO of City of Peace Media and City of Peace Films. Yochanan, welcome to the show.
It's wonderful being here with you, Shaun.
Well, first off, I just wanted to say congratulations to you and your team on the success of The Identical, which released to DVD earlier this week on the 13th.
Thank you very much. It's been a journey, and this started about 4 years ago. To get to this point is a great blessing.
Now, The Identical is the first production I've personally encountered from City of Peace Films. Tell us a bit about City of Peace Films and City of Peace Media and how that got its start.
Well, I'm a music industry guy. Been involved in the Christian industry as well as the mainstream industry for almost 40 years now. And City of Peace Media was sort of a spin-off that came through the label groups that I was involved with, where I connected with my two sons in that as partners. We started in 2010, 2011. Your listeners may be familiar with John Waller, who did While I'm Waiting for the movie Fireproof, or As for Me in My House, which was on the Courageous soundtrack, and John's video As for Me in My House. That we were doing those kinds of things all along, musically. And then my son, Dustin, who was a really wonderful up-and-coming director, we were looking for an opportunity to do our first movie and to get him involved in that. And, man, it couldn't have went better, with him directing people like, Ray Liotta, Ashley Judd, Seth Green, Joe Pantoliano, you name it, he did it. And it was an incredible time in putting this film together.
Well, I think that's one of the things that listeners are going to especially find interesting if they didn't know that this is a family affair where there were a few generations of you working together to make this happen. That's really interesting, and I'm sure that was a lot of fun.
Well, you start talking about generations. It's funny. Most people don't know this, that we had three generations actually making the film. So my father and I was involved in producing, but my father and I wrote and produced the music in the film. And then you have my son directing and my other son producing, and that's three generations right there. And then in one of the scenes in the movie, the train scene, you'll see my wife, my grandmother, my two granddaughters, and my daughter all in the train scene, so that I could make the statement here on your program today that we had 5 generations in the movie.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great story. Well, obviously, one big focus of the film is its music. Obviously, it's a really great and engaging story, but you're covering a wide range of musical styles that really spans around 5 decades from the 30s through the 70s. What were some of the challenges you faced in bringing together such divergent musical styles under a single movie project?
Well, if it wasn't for the fact that we had lived out those eras, what I mean by that is my father, Jerry Marcellino, was a big Motown producer in the 70s. He produced, remember Rockin' Robin with Michael Jackson back in 72?
Oh, definitely.
He did the Jackson 5, the Diana Ross, the Supremes, Four Tops, Lionel Richie, Commodores, you name it, he did it. And that was in the 70s. But he was an artist in the 50s, traveling with, Fats Domino and Little Richard and all kinds of people. So he was an artist in the late 50s, and then an artist in the 60s, and then became a producer in the late 60s, and then in the 70s became a very successful producer. And so he lived all that out. And then, of course, my musical background was the 70s is where I got my start in the mid-70s, and then I went on from there. And so the interesting thing about it all is that we lived out those generations personally and wrote songs and produced records in those time frames. So it was different than some young guy coming in today who's 20 years old trying to do a period piece. We actually did it like we did it, back in the day. And so we've been told that the authenticity of the music and the periods, and being that it's original music, people thought they were hit songs from the era. That happened a lot to us, where people would say, I know that hit. Who did that, And so that made us feel like, wow, we were on track with what we were doing. So the authenticity really of the period came from the fact that we lived it out and did it like we would have done it.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair statement from you. As I watched the film a couple times, that was one of the things that struck me. My first reaction was, this certainly must be music that is from the period that was recorded back in the day. But like you said, these are original pieces just done in the right style and very appropriate for the film. As somebody who grew up in a household that listened to an awful lot of Elvis music, my mom's a huge, huge Elvis fan. I couldn't help but notice there are some similarities in the story between the King of Rock and Roll's life story and the story that we see unfolding in the film. Am I right in seeing some sort of an influence there?
Absolutely. I mean, our lead actor, it's scary what he looks like, he looks like a young, Elvis, and the mannerisms, the features, the vocal tones, all that were striking, resembled it in a striking manner. And we were trying to create, obviously, with this movie, an iconic kind of vision for Drexel Hemsley, who's one of the two twin brothers in the film, the character of Drexel Hemsley and the character of Ryan Wade. And so this is a movie where you have two twin boys that were born in the Great Depression, and one of them was given away at birth to a family, pastor and his wife, who could not have children, to try to give them a better life because there were no jobs, no food. It was very, very bad. Well, the one that stays with the family goes on to be this Elvis-esque, Johnny Cash-esque, icon in music named Drexel Hemsley, and the other goes on to go down the track that his father had wished for him, which was to go into the ministry and be a pastor. And, of course, we find out in the story that the lives of these men unknowingly intersect, and we have a story, really, I like to say, where you see the sovereignty of God moving in the affairs of men, the divine providence of God moving in just at the right time and right place in life, just like it is in real life. As a matter of fact, Joe Pantoliano, the fine actor, told me, what I love about this film, Yochanan, is that it's where people are living in their everyday life. And that's really, Shaun, what we tried to do, and with this film was give people an opportunity to live out what they are living out and see it maybe from a different perspective, and letting God direct the paths of men, Proverbs 16:9.
One more thing related to Blake. My understanding is he was certainly a talented musician before doing this film, but he'd never done any acting before. How did you discover him, and what was it like bringing a brand new first-time actor into the film?
Well, it was a process. I mean, the first thing was, because we're music people first, and then we got into the film business, we're sticklers for quality in music and making sure that we have exactly what we need. So we were looking for something very specific, and when we found him, I went, wow, this is the guy, man. He's got the vocal tone, he's got the style, the stage presence, he's got it all the tools. He was an independent artist in Nashville. And so I just simply asked him, I said, have you ever had a desire to act? He said, oh man, it's been a passion of mine. I've just never had the opportunity to really go to acting school and really develop the gift that I think I have. He goes, I do a lot of performing. So we signed him, brought him aboard to develop him as an actor, not knowing if it would actually work. But we believed he had the kind of work ethic and drive and heart to make that work. And man, he went through acting school, flying colors. We sent him out to L.A. He did it over about a year's period of time. And I got to tell you, the day that Ray Liotta put his arm around him and said, you're something special, this kid's something special, I went, wow, it really all paid off, all of his hard work. And I think that in the movie, people connect with him. They go, wow, they'd never believe this is the first time this guy's ever been out there, Blake is definitely very winsome, and as a character and how he portrays himself, very, very charismatic. I think that's one of the key things people are really drawn into the film with, is just the character he portrays. Absolutely, And part of it really kind of because he looks like Elvis, he has kind of an Elvis, really aura about him. I think it changes people, it kind of brings them into this this alternate universe, of wow, what if, and all this kind of stuff, and it really takes you down a road. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think many of us are at least somewhat familiar with Elvis's story, and so as we watch the film and see Blake, there's some things that feel very familiar and comfortable, and you just kind of sit down and enjoy the film and go along for the ride.
Exactly, and we've heard that time and time again, Shaun.
Well, I've seen the film a couple of times, and really the two themes for me that stood out was one, discovering your identity and calling, and second, the theme of kind of related redemption and forgiveness. But for you and your team, what was the core message that you really wanted to see moviegoers come away with when they finished watching the film?
Yeah, that really, the mind of a man plans his way and the Lord directs his steps. Proverbs 16:9, I think, is one of the key verses, that God's got a plan and a direction for our life, and we have to pray about it and go down that road and let him direct that. Obviously, the tagline, if he, God, is in your dreams, nothing can stand against them. So we know that if he be for us, who can be against us? If he is directing our path, then we're going down the path that he wants us to. And I think, you start to combine those kinds of things with the fact that, this is actually, Shaun, a biblical worldview film. Maybe not in the traditional sense that people would see that, but it is. When you begin to reflect on all the worldview points that are in this film, a marriage between a man and a woman, moral purity before marriage is in this film, the preciousness of childbearing, children respecting and honoring their parents, desire to have children in an abortion nation where life has been reduced to something that can just be thrown away. Faithfulness in ministry. I think you find out that this is a man in Reese Wade, the father, who's been a pastor for 40 years. Whether a person is in ministry for 40 years or they've been in a vocation for 20 or 30 years, it seems to me that faithfulness, whatever that is, okay, should be honored. These are people that are really working hard. We exalt marital love in this movie. We show the real struggle against our sin. Or sins. In the case of Reese Wade, pride, trying to direct his son to go down a path that he wants, where it may not necessarily be what God wants. And so we show the true portrayal of a pastor as a sinner, but not as a charlatan, and chiefly as a repenter to his son, in the movie. You saw a pro-Israel stand in this movie, Shaun, where Reese Wade is praying for God's protection over Israel during the Six-Day War in 1967. Why that's important for us to be praying for Israel. We made a strong statement against racism and a statement for equality for all people. And of course, what got us started on this talk today, finding your place or calling in your own generation in order to glorify God. That's Acts 13:36. So we feel that there's just a whole lot going on here that can really touch people's lives. I feel like families are going to be hitting rewind and going, wow, that really affected me. That really ministered to me. Let me look at that again. And in addition to that, you have 85 minutes of bonus content in the DVD and Blu-ray. You get a chance to see what the heart is behind the Identical. My family speaks out about that. The music behind the Identical, you're going to get to see that. There's a lot of great things in here that we feel are going to encourage believers everywhere, and also for somebody that may not know the Lord in their life, I really believe that they're dealing with the same thing. What am I doing here? Why am I here? Why was I born? Was I born for a reason? Where am I going? And this film sort of lays out a game plan for people that are seeking, that there is a way and there is truth.
I definitely saw all those various themes and topics throughout the film, as you mentioned. One of the things I really appreciated, though, is they weren't forced and it wasn't awkward in the way that they were presented, which I think is a really important point to make, because some of the Christian film or faith-based films we see today, there are things that are forced, and the way they're put in is just a little bit too over the top, and I didn't get any sense of that. I felt like the way you presented those themes just really works very well and connects very well throughout the whole film.
Thank you, Shaun. And again, back to my comment that I made on Joe Pantoliano, he just said, hey, it's where people are living in their everyday life. Not Christian people, not, people that maybe don't have faith in their life. I'm talking about everybody. Where are they living in their everyday life? And this is a film about that. It's connecting where you really are.
We're getting to the point where we're going to need to start wrapping up here. So one thing I wanted to work in yet for the interview is just get a sense of any new or upcoming projects you have going on. I know you had said there was some additional music that was released to coincide with the DVD coming out this week. Tell us a bit about that, and then maybe give us a quick snapshot of something you have coming up called the Identity series.
Well, first off, your listeners can go to theidenticalmovie.com to find out more. You can go to cityofpeace.com, and you can go to theidentical/Facebook and start to look at several items that would help one understand more about what's going on. New projects. We had several music projects release alongside the DVD and Blu-ray 2 days ago on the 13th. These were the musicians and writers that were involved in The Identical in the movie. And, of course, we have the dual disc soundtrack album that was re-released. It was released with the release of the movie on September 5th, and it also re-released 2 days ago with the release of the Blu-ray and DVD. There are 5 artists that have been involved with City of Peace that were in that film. And each of them put out an EP of some additional music, along with music of the movie. For instance, we had the New Life theme, the score theme that was co-written by myself and a guy named David Liscombe of a group called House of Peace, just released his record, and I would encourage all your listeners to check it out. It's called Into the Great Unknown. Into the Great Unknown by House of Peace. And so that came out of a full-length album, 11 tracks. And then we have the Blake Rayne, the Morph Kings, the Ricky Reese Band, and Darcy and Moe. All these were artists that you heard all throughout the movie. They also had EPs that released on Tuesday. So if you want more of the music and a little bit more about what's behind some of these guys, their heart for God, and so on and so forth, I think that you get to see that and hear that and feel that. That's going on. We're in development on like 3 movie projects right now that we are very passionate about. And everything we do has got to connect redeeming value. But one of the things that we're working on right now is the Rocky Marciano story. Rocky Marciano was one of the greatest boxers in history, and it has an incredible story as the only undefeated heavyweight champion in history at 49-0. And it's right now the working title is the Brockton Blockbuster 49-0. We're doing some work on that. We're working on a few other very important projects. We have a beautiful project that was really connected to the movie called the Identity series. Max Lucado and so many others, Bill Cornelius, and so many wonderful pastors spoke into this project where we're dealing with what is our identity in this life. I mean, our true identity. Our true identity is that we are children of the living God. I mean, we're His people. And so we get into, in a world where people are trying to connect, they're trying to find out about their identity. We have a wonderful teaching series that we're working on right now that was connected to the movie with many of these wonderful pastors speaking about their true identity in the Lord. So I think you'll hear more about that. And, wow, I mean, I could go on and on, but we've got a lot going on at City of Peace, and we're grateful for that. And we just want to see God's name glorified, and we want to bring redeeming value to this world in any way that we can.
All right. Well, thanks for giving us a snapshot of all the different things that you're working on. As Yochanan said, you can learn more about the film at theidenticalmovie.com, and you can find out more about City of Peace at cityofpeace.com. Yochanan, thanks so much for sharing with us today. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks so much, Shaun. God bless you, and Happy New Year to you.
And that's all for this episode of The Shaun Tabatt Show. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can connect with me via email using show@shauntabatt.com. Be sure to follow me via Twitter, where I go by the Twitter handle @STabatt. And if you like the show, head over to iTunes and leave a review. Until next time, this is your host, Shaun Tabatt, signing off.